here. All right, so we'll do, hello people. So we're gonna do tonight something a little different. We're going to be on Zoom tonight, so sorry about that for the change of setup and place. But I wanna start by just going over any sentences that you found challenging from exercise, or probably from lesson 10, if there were any. And if there weren't any, that's okay. We can move on to the teaching section of lesson 12, or probably lesson 11.
Well, like you, I did not get through all of my work.
No worries. No worries. Well, let's look at a couple of them then.
But I'm gonna blame COVID crazy on that.
Yes. Sorry for anybody watching this. Yes, we were at home, shut down this week because of COVID. So it's been a weird, 10 days or so. So anyway, I want to, maybe we'll highlight, let's see here, a couple of these tenses. So our lesson last time was on the imperfect indicative. So we talked about last time that there are kind of two big systems, you could call them. Those are called the primary tenses and the secondary tenses. That does not relate to how important they are. That really fundamentally has to do with the fact that these are formed in different ways, first of all. But the idea behind it is the primary tenses happen. So if we were going to kind of draw a timeline, the primary tenses happen from the present into the future. So they're kind of going on right now or not yet going on. Mm-hmm. In the secondary tenses, again on a timeline, relate to things that are already done. So it would be, kind of pre-now and going backwards. So the imperfect tense is a secondary tense. The present is a primary tense. It happens now in the present. The imperfect, and so now, so now I'm going to zoom in kind of and do just a timeline on the imperfect. So the imperfect, let's see here, timeline. This is now, this is later or the future, this is before now or the past. So the present happens now, and it could be a simple action like I eat, or what's called a progressive action, I am eating. And in English, those are two different things, right? In English, that's different, eat and am eating. But in Greek, that would be the same verb. Oops, sorry, as I read it in Latin letters. Estheo. So we could translate estheo as either I eat or I am eating. In the Greek, that would be the same, form. It would look the same in the Greek. With the imperfect, we move into the past, or we can say into secondary time, because now we're going before now. And the imperfect can express two different kinds of action, either an ongoing, and this kind of looks like that progressive arrow over here, an ongoing action, like for example,
I was eating.
Yeah, I was eating. That's great. Yeah, we could just use that same one. I was eating. Or it could be what's called an iterative or habitual. So the many lines are kind of like many instances of eating, like I
ate every day.
Yeah, kind of that idea. So often in English we'll use a verb like would. I would eat. I would eat, or I would have a cup of coffee every morning, in my 20s, or I don't know, whatever. So I would eat, or even sometimes we'll see like I used to eat,
or in my every day yesterday.
Yeah, right, exactly. Or I would brush my teeth morning, noon, and night, or something like that. Now, and again, for us, we have to be careful when we say some of these things. It almost sounds like you're done doing it. So again, be aware of that in the English, that sometimes these verb tenses almost sound like I used to brush my teeth, and that can signal to the English ear, oh, you don't brush your teeth anymore. But that's not what you're saying. What you're saying is this was a habitual, iterative, and the word iterative is spelled like this, iterative. It comes from a Latin word meaning again, iterum. So an iterative word or iterative verb would happen again and again and again. It's a habit kind of thing. It happens a lot. Okay. So to form this then, what we would do to form these imperfects is there are kind of two big things. The first thing that we'll need is called an augment, and that is going to be an epsilon. And we're going to talk about kind of some of the forms of this epsilon. So I'm going to add this epsilon before my stem. So in our paradigm, we have the verb luo. And so I put this epsilon up in front to become elu something. And we'll see kind of what that'll be. The second bit, just like we saw with the present active and present middle passive, is we'll have these endings. Okay, and the endings are going to tell us, what we're going to see is the endings technically tell us three things. Three things. Do you want to give me any of those three you can think of, Dr. Hutchinson?
Person.
Good.
Number.
Uh-huh. Can you give me the other one?
Mood? Oh, no.
No, not mood.
No.
So I'll go to the present. So we'll go luo versus luamai.
Oops.
Luamai. There we go. Both first person singular. What did I change? Can you parse them? So luo is?
Tense. So present, active, indicative, first person, singular.
Good. Okay, so it's a present active indicative first. Yeah, from, go ahead.
Verb luo, meaning I loosen, destroy.
Excellent, perfectly parsed. How about luamai?
Oh, I can't remember.
That's okay, go to the recitation, that's totally fine. It's in the declension, or pardon me, in the conjugation. Luamai, lue, luatai, luamatha, luasa, luantai.
Luantai.
Yes.
I luate. Luamatha. Luatai. So is that the, no, that one is luatai, luamatha. Is that the perfect?
It's not the perfect. It's actually, I think it's like the second one we learned, which is the present.
Oh, the present middle passive.
Good, middle passive.
So present middle passive indicative. First person singular.
Excellent. Right, and that's it. From luo, meaning
Luo,
destroy, right?
At least in destroy. Right.
So notice there's one more thing that ending can tell us. Can you see what could change based on the ending?
The voice.
That's exactly right. So this are luo, lues, lue, luo, lues, lue, luamen, luete, lucy, active, versus our present middle passive endings, luamai, lue, luetai, luamatha, luesta, luantai. So those are the three things that our endings can tell us. They can tell us person, first, second, and third person. They can tell us number, singular or plural. And last but not least, they can tell us voice. And again, in Greek, we have three voices. We have active voice, where the subject acts. We have, subject acts. We have passive voice, where the subject is acted upon. So he suffers, you could say. That's kind of what passive is, what it means in Latin. So the subject, which say receives the action, that's fine. And then we have the middle, where the subject acts upon himself or herself, right? So subject is the actor, but is acting upon himself or herself. So that would be like this shows up in Spanish a lot, for example, with like expressions like, I brush myself the teeth, cepillarme los dientes.
Yeah,
things like that. So anyway, so that's kind of what's going on. In other languages, they'll use, oops, sorry, my chair. In other languages, again, they'll do more like what we call reflexives, but Greek likes this middle voice to kind of accomplish that. Okay. So,
Yes.
so then with these imperfects, then we have our augment, but then we also have our imperfect active endings. That was what lesson 10 was all about. So
Yes.
those active endings on, s, sometimes with that movable new, on, elon, los, loa, eluamen, amen, sorry, eluamen, eluate, elon. So be aware that this first person singular and this third person plural are actually the same form, omicron nu. So that can be tricky in context. That can mess us up. But that's what we're going to look for. We're going to look for that augment, and then we're going to look for the ending then to look for our person, number, and voice. Okay, so a couple of things here where we can see it. So let's look at where this augment comes. So right here, we have the verb aperkatai, aperkatai. Now, we have to know, and here's kind of the big so what. When we're going augment hunting, we must know our dictionary forms. Because, and what we're gonna see is when we come, for example, to aperkatai, we might, and we're gonna see this, our eyes are gonna start going, wait a second, is that epsilon? Is that an augment? What was it something like, oops, was it something like apothnesco, for example? Apothnesco, and that omicron became an E, so apethnescon or something like that, and that happens. So we're really going to have to know, well, what is my dictionary form? And here, our dictionary form is aperkamai.
Right, it is aperkamai.
Good.
So there's no.
That's exactly right. So there's no augment. And that's kind of where I would encourage us to start is, especially now, so we're adding our second tense, is we're going to kind of go augment hunting. So when we see a verb, oh, sorry, there's apothnesco, speak of it. There it is. So this one does have an omicron. So if we saw a peth with an epsilon, we would know, or we would want to know, we'd want to see, oh, look at that. What was an omicron has now been swapped out to be an epsilon. Okay? So this, number one, is just straight presence, just two present tenses, versus, look, here it is in number two, apethnesken.
So I had that one as the imperfect. So I had, this man was dying.
Good. That's exactly right.
On behalf of his brother, and he was teaching the people about love.
Excellent. And so here, our second imperfect. So they actually started us off with one of the hardest imperfects to spot, where we have a very subtle in between. Notice where the augment went. It went in between a prepositional adverb, apa. It goes in between a preposition. We're going to see this also down here in number 5. So our verb is sunago, and whenever, and soon is our preposition with, soon plus the dative. And so when you have, that's exactly right. So when you have a preposition, the augment will go between the preposition and the root verb that we got the compound from. So it was soon.
So the disciples were gathering.
Good. So, and then there's exactly right. There's our nominative subject, nominative plural. The disciples.
I didn't get that far. I really had. This is not the best week for me.
That's okay. That's okay. So, but the big so what is, and it's really good actually. Let me just praise you.
Would it be the faithful disciples?
That's exactly right.
That's
exactly right. And one thing that was really great, whether you did this on on purpose or on accident, notice our form sunegon could be our first person singular or our third person plural. What is it here? Is it a first singular or a third plural?
Well, I saw that, but then I looked at what the nominative was, and that's plural.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. So that's how you would know, right? Now, if we didn't have, let's just say we didn't have hamathetai or hamathetoy hoi pistoi, or mathetai, sorry, it's feminine. or sorry,
I would have
the
put
first
both.
declension masculine.
I would have
You
put both and then gone hunting for
okay?
some.
That's exactly right. So you would kind of go like, well, I guess it could be they were gathering, or it could be I was gathering bread.
Mhm.
I don't know. It could be either.
I
But
don't know.
since we have a nice, clear nominative plural right up front, we know what that's got to be. Okay. Yeah. All right. So number 3. So I would just say for one, one just quick comment on that. So often, often they're really easy to see. Here's one example. Even though it's still kind of weird, this a melete. So this is weird because instead of being an epsilon, this is from mellow. Oops, this is from mellow. Hello, mellow.
I haven't gotten this vocab down from this chapter yet.
That's totally okay. So it means like I am going to, or I am
Like
about to.
about to that
Yes,
about yeah.
yes. So we would expect it to be MLO, but it's kind of a verb you just have to learn. They give you, I think it's like page 54 or 55 even, where they kind of just give you some of these ones that are a little weird. So that's one of them. But all I have to say is the augment, even though it's a weird augment, pardon me, you can still kind of see it of like, okay, that's not mellow. It is mellow, but it's mellow with an augment. So you can kind of spot that. So that's an easier one.
I translated that one as to, and you were about to.
Yep.
And then use the infinitive to walk in it.
It. Yeah. Yeah. And what's the antecedent of this pronoun?
Right. So in it, and that's what I.
Good. And do you know what's the antecedent? What's the it that you were going to walk in?
Death. The way of death. The way of death.
That's exactly right. So aute is feminine and singular, and it's feminine and singular.
Antecedent.
Yeah.
Right.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. Okay. So all I have to say is we kind of started with a very my opinion is kind of tricky to find with these like a pethne scan. That's hard to see, I think. Versus this
that one that's at the beginning, right?
That one's pretty odd, or again, it kind of jumps out. Emelite, that kind of jumps out at you. Synagon, that's hard to see, in my opinion. That's hard.
Perixetai, in number 1,
mm-hmm.
You say the glory of God is departing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, is departing, is going away.
Okay, so it's just simple. Okay.
Yeah, good. So you could say departs if you wanted to do like a simple present. The glory of God departs, or is departing. Yeah, remember we have that choice of either a simple present or a present progressive.
I wasn't sure which to put there because I was like, do I just say the glory of God departs from the assembly because the prophet dies, or is dying, which does it matter? Or
not for these exercises. Sometimes I'll just say like when we, for example, if we're reading like the scriptures, we want to be really careful. And this is one thing I would say is, again, as translators, what we could see, so to speak, is the verb tense alone isn't telling you whether that's like a simple departs or is departing. The actual verb form itself wouldn't tell you that. So it's either a stylistic decision, or again, it could be that idea of like, for example, if it said like nun apercitai, it's now departing. I'd probably say that, but you can also still translate it as now departs. The emphasis there being that right now the glory's leaving. That would be the very clear emphasis. And again, then I could kind of think through, well, is that better communicated through is departing or departs, or now departs, or now is departing? So that's kind of the challenge. And so for again, I think one of the main things that the languages give you is they give you a sense of what your options are, and keeps you from like what I call over translating the text, or like over exegeting the text. Like, yeah, well, that could just be a translator's decision, so to speak. So, okay. Let's see. Nice infinitive here. Going to mellow is one of these verbs that's going to always take a complementary infinitive. They were going, or in this case, you were going. You were going. Yeah, Peru to travel or to walk. One more. Let's see. One more augment. Here we go. Number 4, which kind of rounds out. So we saw what I'll call like just a simple augment up front, like a diduscite or a didusca. Sorry.
Again, that's from ago to lead. Is that right?
Yes. So our second one, so to speak, or at least I jumped down to number 5 where we had sunago, and we put it right here. Oh, we saw that as well. Sorry, we saw this as well on number 2. Yeah. So a pethnesken. Those are both examples of where you have a preposition in front, functioning as an adverb, basically. Apethnes. What's our form? Ken.
So up. No, okay.
Yeah, good. Uppa. Yeah. So what we have is, notice the augment goes between the preposition and our root verb, or in this case, so changed an omicron to an epsilon. In this case, took our alpha and makes it an eta. Okay. All right. So those kind of I wrote it in the present. Anyway, so I'm like, I won't change that, just for simplicity's sake. So the simple augment, nice, clear up front. The maybe a little more complicated augment, where it comes in between a preposition and a verb, or the root verb. And then the third option would be right here with, oh wait, where did it go? The lengthening. There it is, number 4. So again was from ago, and then our augment took this alpha and lengthened it. So kind of what happens is the alpha plus the epsilon, those like combine. You do a little bit of vowel math, so to speak, and that becomes our epsilon. So it became again. So the master, or pardon me, the apostle was leading the children, or was taking the children from the temple to the wilderness, to the desert. Hard word to translate here, because it can be a desert and can just be a wild place or a lonely place. This is where Jesus, it's where John the Baptist was in Hey Eremos, pardon me. It's also where Jesus goes to pray by himself, is Hey Eremos. So it can be a hard one to translate because there's not a desert around Capernaum, but there is a desert, so to speak, in the Judean wilderness. So it can be tricky to translate. It seems like the emphasis is more on an empty place. Desolate sounds harsh. Empty sounds like probably a little more accurate. The emphasis is the lack of other peopleness of the area. Okay, so those are the 3 forms the augment can take. Nice up front, in between a preposition and the word, and then kind of doing a little bit of vowel math right up here, where again, if we already had a vowel up front. Okay. So let's jump to our new idea now. And I'm going to switch to just a kind of basic whiteboard here to use. So this chapter is a really simple chapter as far as like our main idea. Lesson 13, all we're doing, I said 13, sorry. Sorry, my Greek
I was like,
class,
wait, how much have I missed?
My Greek class tomorrow is on lesson 13. My Greek class tonight is on lesson 11. Sorry about that. I'm a day ahead. So in lesson 11, the main thing that we're adding, kind of the big idea that we're adding, is we're adding the imperfect middle passive. The imperfect middle passive forms. There we go. All right. And so the first thing maybe that we want to do is we want to just I'll put indicative on there as well, is we want to remind ourselves, what do these 3, ideas here, what do they mean? Imperfect, middle passive, and then indicative. Okay. So we've already talked about the imperfect. Dr. Hutchinson, you want to pick one of them to tackle?
I'm terrible at deciding. Okay. Imperfect means like an action that's not been completed.
Good. That's exactly right. So so it's funny. There's a Greek class, but there's so many Latin derivatives, so we end up using a lot of Latin. But Yeah, so imperfect, the Latin word perfectio, or perficio, pardon me, in the present stem. Anyway, it means I complete. So imperfectum or would mean not completed. So yeah, so again, it's that idea of the ongoing action, the ongoing, or what we saw again a little bit ago, right? Is that iterative action. I used to, or I would often, or something like that. So I was walking to the store and saw my cousin or something like that. So it's this ongoing past action. One thing I want to clarify, it does not mean that it's still ongoing. That is not what's implied.
In the past, ongoing, but
That's,
from in the past.
that's exactly right. And almost always what we'll see, pardon me, is we'll see it in relationship with another verb, just like we do in English, where you might say, I was walking to the store to get some milk when I saw a friend. So the imperfect interacts with an aorist in the Greek, which is kind of more like a simple past tense. So often the imperfect is used to kind of like set the stage, and then the aorist, so to speak, like interrupts that action. But from the mind of the speaker, so to speak, that first action was this ongoing thing that gets interrupted or whatever, something like that. Okay, so yeah, that's what the imperfect is. Again, it's a secondary tense. I'll kind of keep throwing that word in there. Remember, primary tenses are from the present on. Secondary tenses are pre-present. Pre-present. Okay. All right. Middle passive. Let's see. You want to tackle middle passive?
Middle is that the subject acts on themselves, right?
Good. So subject, again, something like I look at myself, something like that, or I free myself, or something like that. And then what's passive?
Subject is receiving the action.
Good. So we could, sorry, there's a verb. So we could say it a couple of different ways. Yeah. So we could say the verb is done to the subject.
Right.
Yeah, the subject is done. The subject is not acting. The subject is acted upon. The verb happens to the subject.
Is the recipient of. Right.
Is the recipient of. Good. Yeah. So we can, and again, that's a really good way to make sure we really understand something, is if we could say it in multiple ways and know what we're talking about. And then last but not least, the indicative. This is probably the hardest one to define. Maybe let's define it by what it's not. So for example, another mood would be the imperative mood. What's an imperative?
Like a command.
Good. Yeah. So an imperative would be a command. So for example, like, go to the store or something like that. We don't have to put an exclamation point. I just like to put it so it shows that it's an imperative. Okay. So an indicative then, let's think about that. Like the man goes to the store. The man was going to the store. How's an indicative different from an imperative?
It indicates it says what is happening.
Yeah. And it's not, I'll make one comment. Sometimes my students have said like, but what if it's a lie? Okay, a lie would still go in the indicative mood. Like it's not, you wouldn't change the verbal mood, but I think it's a good question. It's just to say like, hey, the speaker is kind of communicating in a very, we could just say a very simple way. That's
deceptive, but you don't change the verb for deceit, right?
That's right. That's exactly right. So
the litmus test is just wrong, but it's still a litmus test, right?
And there's another mood that maybe can kind of work by comparison. Good. Right? And so what would kind of the subjunctive be? Yeah.
This is my subjunctive.
That's exactly right. So like something like he might go, I don't know if he'll go or not. He might. Or sometimes we'll use the helper in English, may. He may go.
May, right?
Yeah, he could go. He may go, And so in English, pardon me, in English, we have different, what are called modal helpers or mood helpers. In English, for example, notice go or goes or go, really those verb forms, and I could even make it clear if I wanted to say like, you go, if I did right here in the indicative. Or I
it
go.
Doesn't change necessarily.
That's exactly right. And so remember, if we're talking about like, let's say, teaching kids or even ourselves, remember as English speakers, we speak a language that does not conjugate its verbs, right? It does not change its verbs almost ever, right? I swim, you swim. I look, you look. The verbs appear the same. whether or not that subject is a first person singular or first person plural, second person singular or second person plural, first or second person. So that's a big idea that kind of we can't repeat enough in English, that, oh man, in English, we're using a lot of helpers, or a lot of, for example, I versus you. We're using a lot of contextual pieces because our verbs never change. So it's on the one hand, it's kind of a, on the one hand, it's kind of a, you might say, an easy thing. Oh, look, it's go or go or go or go or go. But on the other hand, that's actually not super helpful, because you almost just want, I don't know, you just want the verb to give you a clue, to give you a hint, so to speak, and it just doesn't in English. Okay, so in Greek, in Latin, in Spanish, in Hebrew is a little different, but it helps you in other ways. So anyway, in other languages, they'll give you some help that we don't get in our language. Okay, so in lesson 11, we get the imperfect, middle passive, indicative. So the first thing about it, which we've already seen, is the imperfect is going to be marked out by an augment. And our augmenting rules are just the exact same that we saw. If we start with a consonant, like didusco, we'll just see like a simple epsilon. Or we might have an irregular like mellow that becomes like amelon or something like that. But normally it's just going to be a simple epsilon with a smooth breather. We might also see, like we saw, for example, with sunugo or apothnesco, where we see in between the compound forms here, sunegon, for example, we'll see, oops, sorry, that's a short, long circumflex, where we see our alpha plus our epsilon becoming an eta. And one comment I'll make right here is that the accent doesn't go past the augment, it stops right there. So we actually, in this instance, get a short, long circumflex situation here. So again, that's an accenting rule. If you're still tracking accenting rules, if not, that's okay. Although I did have a funny one in actually lesson 12, where my students missed something because of an accent. So they do exist, but we'll highlight them as we come to them. Okay. The last augment example that we saw was when we had kind of that kind of math up front. So for example, we saw ago, alpha becoming agon. Okay, so pardon me. So that's the three options that we're still going to be on the lookout for. So we're looking for our augment off of our present stem. So it was ago becoming agon, or luo becoming eluon, or sunugo or apothnesco, let's say, becoming apothnescon, or pardon me, apethnescon. So that's not going to change. The big thing that's going to change with the imperfect middle passive is now we're going to have middle passive endings, just like we had in the present, where we went luo, lues, lue, luamen, luete, luusi, versus the present middle passive. Luamai, lue, luatai, luametha, lueste, luontai. The imperfect active, eluon, elus, elue, eluamen, eluate, eluon, in the imperfect now middle passive. So you can look at that in your recitation, or again, here it is, eluamen, elu, eluata, oops, eluata, eluametha, oops, eluametha, elueste,
Elusa.
elueste, good, eluanta. Okay. Notice the accent actually on all of the, there, actually that'll go there. But otherwise, the accent on all these is going back before. So eluamen, eluu, eluata, eluametha, elueste, eluanta. So the accent for most of these will actually fall previous to the ending, before the ending. So that's just one thing to keep in mind. Sometimes if you recite the endings or chant the endings, that can be helpful. One place where it's maybe not helpful is like in Greek, where these accents are never going to be on. For example, it's never going to be esthe. It's going to be elueste. So just anyway, highlight that. It's not going to be anta or anta. It's going to be eluanta or ediduskanta, something like that. So those are our middle passive endings. Notice the augment is the exact same as the imperfect active indicative. The endings are what have changed. The endings are what are new. So as we get into translating, you know, that parser's eye of, oh, I see the augment, that means I'm in the imperfect, but now do I have, you know, on esse, amenete on, or do I have amenu eta ametha este on? Okay, so that's kind of what I'm looking for there. So the good news is that's really none of that's a new idea. It's just kind of new endings, which I know we've been saying in our recitation. Okay. All right. The other two things I want to talk about in that they talk about in this chapter relate to conjunctions. Conjunctions. So first, we might ask ourselves, oh, my pen is being weird. Hello. Let's try that again. That was weird. Okay, there we go. All right, conjunctions. There we are. I don't know what just happened. All right, conjunctions. First, let's define it. What's a conjunction?
A word that joins two words or phrases or verbs, two things together, because it can be verbs and clauses. Can
Ooh,
be things.
Cool. Your definition is missing one thing. Do you want me to give you an example that'll help your definition?
Sure.
Phrases?
I don't know. I can't join a
No,
whole lot.
okay. So here's an example. The Brown and Susie Brown and
like things.
Good, two of the same things. Good. So we need to say like the brown and
like
white
two adjectives
dog.
or
Good. That's exactly right. So conjunctions, to your first definition, can join anything. It could be whole clauses like I love to laugh and I enjoy fishing.
And
right?
I enjoy fishing. But
There you go. Right. Or it could just be a single word. Like, for example,
I love to laugh, but I don't like fishing.
There you go.
That would be not true, but I do like fishing.
But it works with this. So anyway, so conjunctions, the real, I think the best definition is they join two of the same thing. Two of the same thing. Now, again, as you said, that could be a single word. That could be a phrase, which just means a group of words without a verb.
But I couldn't say I love to laugh, but snake.
Yeah, exactly right. That's exactly right. Two of the same. Good. Sorry, same thing. Yeah. So it's fun to kind of think of how could I break the rule. I like that.
That doesn't work.
Yeah, I like those things.
Poems love to break these rules.
What did you say?
Poems love to break.
Yes, especially like nonsense poems, like Lewis Carroll stuff, right?
Love that stuff.
Oh man, you're getting so weird on me, Lewis. Okay, so I want to talk about this kind of conjunction first. So we're going to talk about the conjunction kai, not just kai, but we're going to focus on kai. So the first thing that we learn about kai is it's just the simple, we can call it a positive conjunction and.
Okay.
Right, like that. The brown and white dog, or the prophet and the disciple go to the temple, or whatever. That is the first place that we see it. And our biggest clue, actually probably two biggest clues, which we probably haven't even noticed, is that just like in our English sentence right here of brown and white, we can see that our kai is almost always right in the middle of the two things it's joining. Ha prophetes kai he ha mathetes. That great. That's fine. That's totally normal. That's what I would expect. It would just go in between the two things that it's joining. And again, that could be phrases, clauses, single words, whatever. Okay. The second use of kai is what's called, I'm going to do these in a slightly different order. I'm going to do this as what are called is correlative or correlating. So correlative, correlating, correlative conjunctions. And what we're going to see with correlative, conjunctions is we're going to see two conjunctions. So I'm just going to use the plus sign for simplicity's sake. Both my mom and my dad live in San Antonio. Kai. And we'll see this in other ways. So for example, they also give you te and te, and they give you, let's see, there's another one I think they give you here. They give you, yeah, ute and ute, good. So neither nor. So it could be, again, a positive, both and, or it could be what we could call a negative, neither, neither this nor that. You know, I want neither bread nor rice for dinner or something like that, okay? And those are correlative. Or sometimes people call them, I was gonna say this book doesn't call it, sometimes books, grammars will call them coordinating conjunctions. They co-order, I wrote coordinating, coordinating conjunctions. They put things on the same rank. That's what order means. So they're ranking it in the same way. I love both my dog and my cat. I like neither my dog nor my cat, something like that. I don't have a dog or a cat. Oh, there you go. I have neither a dog nor a cat. There's an actual use of it. So in Greek, and then in English too, when we're ordering these things, we can use correlative conjunctions or coordinating conjunctions. And I think different grammarians will kind of call those different things, but that's what's going on there. Did you have a question on that?
Okay. No, but we've seen in some of our translations, Kai, blank, 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 Kai.
That's right. That's exactly what it is. Yeah. So the dictionary may say, and you'll see this a couple different ways. I don't know if they give you uda in this chapter. That's coming up somewhere. No, they just give you uta here. So you'll also learn uda, neither this nor that. So there are a handful of them.
That would be a negative.
Oh yeah, the other one, sorry, they give you one more. Yeah, that would be a negative. The other one they give you is men da. Now, if you really wanted to,
neither nor, men da.
It's funny. They say, on the one hand, such and such. On the other, such and such.
Oh, that's
so
neat.
So it's these really brief called oh my goodness, they're not called enclitics, they're called they're super small particles. There we go. I was like, what's the word? Oh, it's a science term. There you go. Okay, so the particles, they're just little itty bitty. And what men and dad do is they basically kind of give you like the sides of a scale, so to speak. On the one hand, but on the other, and you'll almost never see translators kind of make it that explicit. You know, they might do something like, for example, you know, he thought it could be this or that. You know, that's a more, probably a little simpler translation. Not that it's wrong to translate it on the one hand, on the other. Let's see if they give you another one. Or yeah, they just give you one, or leave men untranslated and just say like, but. On the one hand this, but on the other hand that. Okay. So again, I feel like it's pretty rare that you would actually see somebody go on the one hand, on the other. But no pun intended, but I just use Menda in English when speaking. It's rare that you would see it, but, so that in English would be, or in Greek would be men. It's rare that you would see it. Da, if you do see it, you know, they won't translate it that way.
Got it.
Okay. All right. Okay. Last but not least, our other form of kai is called adverbial kai. Adverbial kai. And this kai is going to be, let's talk about what it's not. It's not going to go in between two things, like our kind of simple conjunction kai. It's not going to go with another kai. Kai, my mom, Kai, my dad, live in San Antonio. It's going to stand on its own, and it's going to work as an emphasis, as an emphatic. So it's like, even you got it right. Like, you're the worst student in my class. Kai su, even you. Or sometimes you'll see it translated, also you. But the point of it is the author is emphasizing. And so when we come across this in our translation, it'll be like right out front, almost always. Let me find a biblical example, like kai humes. Let's see. So in the Septuagint, number 4 of lesson 11, say kai egrepsen moeses. Indeed, or Moses, in fact, wrote the words of the law, of this law, pardon me, into the book. So it's this emphatic use of Kai, where, for example, there it's like, it was Moses, in fact, who wrote these words. That's kind of what's going on here. So the big so what of adverbial Kai, first, how will I spot it? I'll spot it because it's not joining together two things. It's not, so to speak, in between two things. How will I spot it? Well, it's not correlating or coordinate with another Kai or a Tet. And then finally, so it's on its own. And then what does it mean? It's just an emphatic thing. And depending on context, we're going to have to decide what's, again, a natural way. So I don't know, for example, how translators translate verse, or probably number 4, that's Deuteronomy 31. But Moses, in fact, wrote the words of this law in the book, or indeed, or something like that. So they'll use it as like a way to do it. You see that as well, probably from the book of Tobit on number 6. So anyway, that's probably the best way to spot it, is almost always it's out front, and at the very least, again, it's not kind of sandwiched between two of the same thing, even if it's not technically the first word in its clause. And like I said, that's a relatively, not correlatively, relatively brief chapter as far as the new ideas. Thankfully, we have a nice little kind of simpler chapter. It'll give us all an opportunity to catch up on our homework and on our work, myself included. I need to go back and make those answer keys, okay? So let me see here.
We all need to catch up, at least me.
I know, and me too. Well, any specific questions that jump out to you?
Okay, just glancing. When there's a long string of words in between Kais, is it still both and? But I'm just glancing.
Yeah, so probably what it is.
In the practice and review.
That's exactly right. So number 8, we've got Kai eperuesthe ente hado tes agapes, Kai ediduscesthe ton namon tes agapes. So go back to, remember your definition of conjunctions out front is it joins two of the same thing, right? That was our definition. So here, why are they so far apart? Why are our coordinating or correlative conjunctions so far apart? Can you see it? Well, let me ask it this way. What are they joining?
Eperuesthe and edidascesthe.
That's exactly right. So really, they're joining the whole clause.
They're joining the two clauses. So that's why.
Exactly right. So if it was just like one word, right? Both my dad and my mom, they would get right together, right? But when they're joining whole clauses, like number 8, pardon me, right? They were traveling, or pardon me, y'all were traveling in the way of love, or you were both traveling in the way of love and teaching the law of love, right? So we're adding together that whole clause. Y'all were traveling on the way of love, and you were teaching the way of love. And so because we're adding these, bigger units of thought, we're going to have to put those Kais, they're going to end up farther apart. Make sense?
That makes this. Yes, that makes a ton of sense. So I guess I was thrown off by sort of like, if the Kais in the front.
Yes.
Think adverbial, and I was like, but it looks like maybe they should be joined because I'm seeing the estha, and I'm like, but.
Yeah. So. That's exactly right. Well, and that's the thing. So we're it's probably like, I imagine there's some analogies being a physician where maybe you see certain you see certain symptoms, right? And you say, you see symptoms, and you're like, well, I see this one thing, and this one thing could lead to 8 other things. But if it was, let's say instance A, I would also see symptom 2. Oh, I don't see symptom 2. How about B? I would see symptom 3. Oh, I do see symptom 3. C would have symptoms 2 and 3, but I don't see 2. So, right, that kind of a thing.
Right.
Right. And so that's the, I always say, this is how it works, right? Where you were exactly right. Well, we had this chi up front, and then I'm going to kind of go, well, is that just the and notice what of the 3 instances, kind of simple conjunction, correlative, or adverbial, which could you get rid of?
Simple conjunction.
That's exactly right. I can
it's not in between 2 words.
That's exactly right. So now I've got 2 more, right? I've got this adverbial option, which it could be, but what my eyes noticed, what your eyes noticed, pardon me, mine also did, but you're the one asking the question, was that, well, wait a second, I've got this other chi, and you even said, well, and I've got these 2 verbs that seem to be, both imperfects with s that, right, as our ending. So I noticed, okay, it sure does look like we've got this like chi thing going on, which means it's correlative. Okay. So that's exactly how we reason. The wise person perceives the many options and then weighs those options based on the evidence, the data that they can gather. And so one of the things that I try to always teach, my students is generating those categories, so, chi, for example. Chi could be a simple conjunction, a correlative or coordinating conjunction, or it could be adverbial. Okay, if I've got those 3 categories, now at least I kind of know what my options are. Same thing with the nominative case, right? It could be a subject nominative, or it could be a predicate nominative. Oh, I've got a linking verb. Ooh, now it could really be a predicate nominative. Whereas if I see a transitive verb, well, it's not going to be a predicate nominative, so that ability to generate categories and then use the data, the evidence on hand to then, argue my way to my conclusion is, that's the master art. I don't think it matters what you're doing. It seems like that's an important, even choosing ketchup. Well, here are my options. When I go to the store, I've got 38 ketchup options. Okay, how am I going to weigh out these many options?
Yeah, I don't like options.
Well, you're in trouble because you live in a country where we have many, many options, right?
Yeah, I find one thing I like and then I never choose again.
Hey, there you go. Hey, that's a really safe way to do it, right? And we do.
Unless they force me to by stopping making what
I was going to say, then they cancel the product and you're like, oh, now I'm stuck. All right, well, let's pause there, stop for the evening, and that is it. So thank you for coming. For those of you who are here, who watch this online, sorry we missed you. All right.
Thank you.